My name is Terry Irwin, and I'm a professor in the School of Design at Carnegie Mellon University and the director of the Transition Design Institute there. This presentation is an overview of a 6-month research project to understand the perspectives and concerns of stakeholders connected to the problem of a lack of funding for minority entrepreneurs in the US and UK. This research was commissioned by the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center and was carried out by the Transition Design Institute at Carnegie Mellon, who are one of 10 partners researching the many facets of this complex, wicked problem. This video describes the 5th of 6 data gathering steps called Designing for the Transition from the problematic present to the long-term desired future, in which the problem of a lack of funding for minority entrepreneurs has been resolved. In this step, stakeholders took stock in the present to decide what to take with them on a decades-long transition and what to leave behind. They assessed what was and wasn't working and also scanned the present-day landscape to see what new innovations they wanted to take with them on the journey. The map also reveals where stakeholder groups agreed and disagreed. And once again, this step yielded a lot of ideas for systemic solutions in the present. The data gathered from the 4 stakeholder groups resulted in these 6 systems maps, and this video reports on the map highlighted in the blue box and the insights it produced. This step can be found on the Miro board in the 2nd column from the right. The systems map is at the top with the analysis board situated directly below it. The 5th step in the data gathering process, as I said, asks stakeholders to think about the decades-long transition from the problematic present to the long-term desired future. Stakeholder groups were asked to assess what is and isn't working with respect to the problem in the present, and then look around for new emergent ideas and practices that might begin a transition toward problem resolution. The research team aggregated all of the responses from all 4 groups into this matrix, which reveals where stakeholders agree or disagree on what is or isn't working. We also asked stakeholders what new ideas, innovations, and practices they've seen out there that have the potential to disrupt business as usual and jumpstart a transition toward their desired future. And finally, we asked them to look around to see if fragments or pieces of their future vision were already here in the present. Science fiction author William Gibson has famously argued that the future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed. The research team then took the aggregated responses and once again did a clustering exercise to identify high-level themes or categories. And not surprisingly, many of the same themes from the problem, stakeholder relations, and vision maps showed up again in this transition matrix. But it's also interesting to note that these emergent themes also suggest concepts for powerful solutions that could be funded and implemented in the present. The research team also aggregated all of those high-level themes into this matrix, where we again see many of the same issues from the problem map reiterated. This is an important validation in formulating a systemic understanding of this complex problem. Issues related to racism, systems of oppression, a focus on short-term monetary returns rather than long-term value creation, and issues related to the problematic formulation and distribution of data are what stakeholders want to leave behind. And all of these hint at possible solutions in the present. But we also see that there are many things stakeholders feel are working, and these too should be spotlighted so that expanding and amplifying these existing structures and practices can be seen as every bit as viable as a strategy for problem resolution as creating something new. Stakeholders also listed many existing innovative practices that have the potential to address the problem, and we encourage you to read their statements about this on the Miro board. In a similar vein, stakeholders look to see whether pieces of their future visions are already here in the present, and identified things like decentralized incubators and hubs, and positive media coverage of minority entrepreneurs as just two aspects of their collective future vision that are already here in the present. In analyzing the aggregated responses, we see once again that they fell into the three categories of quality of life, entrepreneurship, and solutions. This tells us what stakeholders think should be eliminated, as well as how they think the problem can be solved. So system solutions must always be aimed at three things: decreasing or eliminating some things, amplifying others that already exist, and of course, launching new projects and initiatives. It's important to note how often problem-solving efforts focus only on the latter, the creation of something new rather than phasing out or dialing up existing structures or practices. There's also a section on the transition template that asks stakeholders to think about the decades-long transition from the present to the long-term desired future and describe milestones along a 60-year timeline. Workshop participants did not have enough time to populate this area of the template, so our research team formulated 3 milestone narratives based upon stakeholder responses from both the visioning exercise and the previously discussed transition matrix. We encourage you to peruse these narratives, which are not intended as a way to predict the future, but rather to challenge stakeholders and other audiences to think creatively about the probabilities and possibilities connected to multi-decade transitions toward desired futures. The narratives culminated with the creation of this long-term vision based upon the aggregate responses from the vision exercise. It's intended not as a blueprint or a roadmap, but rather as a challenge to the status quo, with the potential to spark new thinking about what the resolution of the problem would enable in the long-term future. And we encourage you again to spend some time with this future vision when you visit the Miro board. This concludes the 6th video in this series. The final step in research asks stakeholders to propose actual solutions to the problem of a lack of funding for minority entrepreneurs. They propose solutions within the 5 sectors from the problem map and were challenged to think about the level of scale at which each solution might be most effective. The map that resulted is a rich reservoir of solution concepts that reveal areas of broad stakeholder support. Please access video number 7 in this series called Designing Systems Interventions.